Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 2, Frenzy, by John Allen Price. Chapter 18.
Lieutenant, AAA on our port side,
Taylor warned, as a swath of bright green tracers erupted out of the forest.
I got it,
said Alverez, swinging the Cutlass onto the target.
From the trajectory, I'd say they're going after the fighters. Too far for guns. Switching to missiles.
In place of the Sidewinder series of air-to-air missiles they usually carried, the wingtip mounts were now equipped with Hellion anti-surface missiles. From one of their shorter, larger diameter launch tubes, a Hellion burst through the transparent nose cap toward the twin-barreled anti-aircraft gun. It honed in on the infrared signature the hot barrels were creating. When it exploded over the mount, the prodigious ammunition supply was ignited, touching off a prolonged series of explosions, visible for miles.
Nailed them clean, said Taylor. But I got even more anti-aircraft radars coming online.
Do we go after them?
No, the felines have the Nemesis missile,
said Alverez.
Let them go after the radars. We'll take out only targets of opportunity. Our real mission's with Hunter.
As the gunship turned back to its original heading, the lead flights of FA-99 strike fighters thundered over it and broke into pairs. Almost at once, they began unleashing Nemesis anti-radar missiles and more Hellions. While they curved toward the ground, other missiles and additional tracer fire rose from it. However, their volume was not massive enough or sufficiently coordinated to either trap the fighters or overwhelm their electronic countermeasures. In minutes, the initial corridor Hunter's sabotage had created was rapidly expanding into a miles-wide swath, cutting through the defense grid like a dagger. Far to the east, a similar incursion was underway. If nothing hindered them, they would soon have the grid severed into two sections.
There goes another one, said Taylor, the moment a distant fireball boiled out of the forest. Those Air Force guys are pretty good, for all their bragging,
Alverez noted before a jump in the static on her headphones commanded her attention.
Rapier, this is Foil. Rapier, this is Foil. Do you read me? Over.
A familiar male voice asked.
Foil, this is Rapier. We read you loud and clear. Is there something you need? Over.
Affirmative, Rapier.
We need a mission. Our squad was intercepted and slaughtered. We're looking for revenge. Over. We're sorry about Hogan and his people, said Alverez. They were good soldiers. We can always use a wingman. But remember, revenge is a dish best served cold. Over.
I understand, Rapier. This revenge is too important to get hot and reckless about. We're coming in on your starboard. Foil out.
I got him on the surveillance radar,
Taylor advised, identifying a blip moving across his main CRT screen.
They'll be here in less than 3 minutes.
Almost exactly to the second of Taylor's estimate, a set of navigation and running lights flashed briefly in the aurora-streaked sky off the gunship's right side. The second Cutlass swung around its dark blue sister ship and settled into position about 100 yards off its left side and several dozen feet behind. Enough distance separated the two aircraft so they could bob and weave independently to avoid ground fire and not risk collision. The jets that filled the sky around them minutes earlier were gone, spreading through the defense grid in an effort to neutralize a large enough section so the assault transports could fly it in relative safety. The succeeding flights of FA-99s streaked past the slower-moving helicopters on a direct run for the Citadel and its inner defenses. With the exception of occasional tracer fire from an overlooked or newly activated anti-aircraft gun, they were largely left alone.
Proximity signals on drones Hiraga and the Congo,
said Ozawa, deactivating the shrill beeping in almost the same moment they sounded.
All reconnaissance warheads are now inside the Dark Legion territory. Excellent, Renya-san. Now keep watch over the others while I direct this one,
Watanabe ordered, glancing at her subordinate as she hit the transit button on one of the individual drone control panels.
Drone Akagi, change course and follow Cutlass-class ships crossing in front of you on my mark. Maintain nominal safe observation distance at all times. Mark.
Would it not be more productive to have the warheads trail the capital jets or wait for the assault transports?
Don't worry, we'll follow the flashier aircraft as well.
Watanabe gave Ozawa a testy, irritated look, which immediately had him averting his eyes from her.
But these helicopters aren't the usual grape shot and guardians we see around here. They're used exclusively by Capital Special Forces and likely deployed the squads we saw earlier. Following them could be the most productive operation we'll perform tonight.
I now understand. Thank you, Corporal, said Ozawa, before he noticed one of the other drones had broken off its random search pattern and was orbiting a site deep inside Legion territory.
Look, drone Kirishima has discovered a new source of enemy activity.
On one of the console's auxiliary screens was an aerial view of what looked like a stone bunker. Its single entrance was open, and spilling out of it was not only a sickly yellow light, but a teeming horde of Legion troops. When Watanabe turned to the main screen, she found the bunker's location was in the inner defense zone, approximately where the computer estimated the capital assault transports would be landing.
In a few moments there'll be thousands of them,
Ozawa continued,
spreading across the landscape before the jets even notice them. What are you doing, Corporal? Providing a way for them to be noticed,
said Watanabe, lifting her finger off the auto-record button on Kirishima's control panel. Now none of the incoming data was being transcribed onto a laserdisc.
Drone Kirishima, emergency cancellation orders, Archimedes. Target site entrance, execute maneuver, divine wind, mark. It's diving, impact of 15 seconds. What damage can it do? It contains no explosives. But it does contain something that is highly explosive.
Watanabe tapped the fuel status meter on Kirishima's panel until Ozawa noticed it.
The tanks are nearly full. Between that and the weapons those creatures are carrying, the results should be spectacular. And when the maneuver ends, you can help me delete my last orders to the warhead from the computer records.
On the auxiliary screen displaying the Kirishima's data feed, the image rolled and blurred in response to Watanabe's orders. When it stabilized, the bunker was once again in the center of the screen and growing rapidly. In moments, it had filled it, and the individual legionnaires, necromutants, and razides teeming around it became identifiable. Then the image fluttered and dissolved into static as the status lights and readings of the drone's control panel went dead.
Good God,
Hunter blurted out when he felt the ground tremble under his feet, and seconds later, the forest his squad was moving through was illuminated by a harsh orange light.
What the heck? Hit the deck!
Less than half a mile away, far closer than any previous explosion, a fireball split both earth and sky. The drone had managed to fly partway into the bunker before crashing. Its fuel tanks were ripped open instantly, and their contents were mixed with disintegrating engine parts. The resulting sheet of flame spread over the munitions and weapons stockpiles inside the bunker. In seconds, they were igniting and chain reacting violently. The resulting detonation blew the roof off the bunker and rained it down on the surrounding countryside. Rocks ranging in size from marbles to basketballs pelted the area where the squad had taken cover. All the while, the ground heaved from the continuing explosions at the site. The heat from the fires being generated in the bunker could be felt by the squad, and above the rolling thunderclaps, they could hear the shrieks and wails of the legionnaires.
"Listen to them,"
said Parker, when the thunder died down to a rumble.
"They never do stop, do they?"
"It sounds like they're coming closer," Vanetti added. "They are," said Rogers, rising to a crouch and sweeping one area with his motion detector. "I got a small unit, Mitch, and it's moving into visual range. 70 meters. "Heavy weapons, forward," Hunter commanded. "The rest of us will support you with grenade launchers. Ray, you detecting anyone else? There's a couple of larger units at longer ranges. They'll probably come running when we open fire. That's exactly what I want. Plot us an evac route, Lieutenant. We'll need it. Prepare to fire on my signal. Holston, Shacker, and Parker moved in the direction Rogers indicated and clicked off the safeties on their weapons. Hunter followed immediately behind them and signaled for them to stop near the clearing edge. He next motioned for the rest of the squad to take defensive locations along the flanks and rear of their position. They had just settled in when the Dark Legion patrol appeared. Unlike most of the others they had seen, this one had only one Razide, a few Centurions, and a swarm of Legionnaires moving around them. They moved in a steady run and appeared more intent on reaching the bunker area than on sweeping the landscape. The moment he saw that most of his squad had cleared fields of fire, Hunter snapped his fingers. The machine guns and sniper rifles barked loudly, and their muzzle flashes flared brightly in the semi-darkness. The first to be hit in the patrol was the Razide. Holston riddled it with a full burst of the new armor-piercing incendiary shells. They penetrated its thick skin and exploded among its metal skeleton and internal machinery. The creature managed to stay on its feet in spite of multiple impacts and burst into flames as it tried to level its rocket launcher at the squad. Next to fall were the two Centurions, who had turned in the direction of the attack and were commanding the Legionnaires to charge. Shacker and Parker hit them with the same rounds Holston used, blew the armor off their bodies, and incinerated them in a similar manner. The moment they died, the surviving Legionnaires stopped their screaming and the assault. Massed rifle and machine gun fire cut them down in seconds. Then the battlefield fell strangely silent. "I got movement," Rogers warned, swinging his motion detector rapidly. "Big time, multiple directions." "Squad, mad time," said Hunter. 30 seconds, then we evac. Leo, drop some flamers here. Full timers." The entire squad stood in a circle and emptied their weapons into the surrounding terrain. They did not track any targets or draw any immediate return fire. For half a minute, they put on a firepower display, then abandoned the position in the direction Rogers was pointing. "Anything happening back there?" Hunter asked, changing a clip in his assault rifle as he ran. "Yes, sir. The site's taken fire from 2 locations," said Harris, glancing over his shoulder. "Now 3. And there goes one of Leo's specials." With each succeeding detonation of a napalm grenade, the volume of fire from the Dark Legion units intensified. It was only a matter of seconds before they were firing on each other. In the confusion of battle, the telepathic orders to cease fire were not sensed or understood, and by the time the units were drawn close enough to be identified, they in turn were drawing attention from arriving flights of FA-99 fighters. "That's it, nailed good," said Hunter as he watched the strafing runs begin from where the squad took cover. "How long are we going to stay here, Captain?" Venetti requested. "Just long enough to catch our breath." Hunter turned away from the air attack and glanced around until he got his directions. "The Citadel is that way, and we still have a good hike ahead of us." "Shouldn't we wait until the assault troops arrive?" asked Rogers, sipping water from his canteen after he finished gasping for air. "And join in the general attack?" "No, by the time those troops disembark, the legions will be ready for a ground fight. I know it'll be dangerous, but sneaking into a citadel will be easier during the initial air attacks, which, from the looks of what's coming, should begin any minute now. Check your weapons, and if any of you are feeling tired now, let Wendy give you a booster shot. We won't have time for it later." "I already sense what you're here to tell me is not good." Ragathol growled at the necromutant who hovered uneasily at the threshold to his nether room. "Enter and report."
"My master sent me to advise you of recent developments,"
said the necromutant, bowing respectfully to the creature seated on the basalt throne.
"The probing forces he thought were destroyed have damaged part of our outer defenses, and the human attack planes are exploiting it."
"Bring up a territorial map from the command nexus, Ekmiriez." The map of Venus and its orbital traffic patterns were wiped from the wall screen and replaced with a tactical map of the Citadel and the surrounding areas. On it were the symbols for hostile forces, the Dark Legions, and something Ragathol had not expected to see, markers indicating battle damage.
How did they manage to do this?
He asked, clearly surprised.
The humans are using equipment that deceives our sensors and confuses our ground forces,
said the necromutant.
They've been more successful than we estimated.
Deceive us? How could these humans deceive us? We are the masters of the dark symmetry.
They'll not continue to do so for long, Lord Ragathol. Master Alverez promises this. To ensure your safe departure, he requests you delay liftoff until these intruders are dealt with.
I'm blessed that your master is so concerned about my safety, said Ragathol, the calm tone of his voice belying the sarcasm in his remark. Tell your master I'll wait, though it had better not be for long. Otherwise, my flight plans will need to be changed, delaying my arrival at the defiled castle of he who must be obeyed.
Yes, Lord Ragathol, I'll tell my master,
the necromutant promised, bowing again.
He's grateful for your cooperation. Why did you not grow angry with him, my master?
Asked Ekmiriez, after the messenger had retreated from the nether room. Because anger would not have served me at this time, said Ragathol. I wanted him to return to Alverez with my answer. Make a record of his defense of this citadel. If it sustains heavy damage from the humans, then I must use his failure against him, just as mine was used against me. If I use it right, I could return here as this citadel's new master.
We have another loss, advised an Air Force console operator. Able Fox 19, its crew appears to be ejecting.
On the center's tactical screen, a capital aircraft symbol changed from bright green to red and began flashing. A smaller symbol broke away from it. The cockpit pod had successfully ejected. Then it faded out and was replaced by the marker for a downed aircraft, one of a growing number.
Analysis, said the senior coordinating officer, moving over the console. What brought this one down? Anti-aircraft gunfire, said the operator. And like the others, it appeared to be either vehicle or infantry based, not a fixed sight mount. Send a pair of grape shots to rescue the crew, if they can survive that long in such a hostile land.
Our fighter crews are going to have to learn not to go after such targets with autocannons, Wood observed, stepping over to the console as well. It may be a glorious way to do combat, but its end isn't very glorious. We will lose multi-million value aircraft. Colonel, I want you to order the fighters to head for the nearest forward base as soon as they expend their external ordnance. The armament crews at the bases can have them rearmed in a matter of minutes.
Yes, sir, though they may not like getting such orders from a ground forces colonel, said the coordinating officer.
Then have General Sumner give the order. Wood turned and briefly pointed at the commanding officers, who were busy reading the reports their aides were handing to them. As he did so, he scanned the tactical screen yet again. Sometimes, service rivalry can be as bad as corporate protocol. What are those two ships? They're moving a lot slower than the felines, and the Hercules IVs are just entering the outer defense zone.
They're two Special Forces gunships. We think one of them is from Captain Hunter's squad. Would you like them contacted?
No. Whatever they're doing, I have no doubt it'll help with the assault.
Lieutenant, I still can't raise the squad, said Taylor. I think the Aurora might be giving us some trouble. I think what's happening on the ground may have more to do with it, Alverez replied. There's enough noise going on down here to wake the dead, if the Dark Legion hasn't already done so.
Even through their helmets and the clatter of the rotor blades, Taylor and Alverez could still hear the muted sounds of explosions and gunfire. Unlike the strike fighters, which always stayed at least a few hundred feet off the ground, the slower-moving gunships were able to hug the terrain and often treetop height. They were largely ignored by the surviving defenses, which continued their frenzied efforts to bring down the higher-flying jets.
"Missile launch," Taylor shouted. "Starboard side. Looks like they're launching a flock of them." "I got it. Too close for missiles. Switch to guns," said Alverez. "Foil, this is Rapier. We're going in after that active battery. Cover us. Over."
"Roger. We'll ride your tail, Rapier. Foil out." The Cutlass gunships broke hard to the right, with the blue one moving even further into the lead. Half a mile ahead of them, a multi-launch battery was still unleashing missiles at the flights of warplanes that were almost directly overhead. They broke formation and scattered frantically, ejecting flares and clouds of chaff in an effort to jam the Dark Legion weapons. Taylor switched the forward turret to manual operation and placed the crosshairs floating on his tactical screen over the battery. The moment he pressed the button atop the control stick, a stream of tracer, incendiary, and armor-piercing shells burned into the darkness and scored hit after hit on the target. Even when Alverez swung the gunship past the target, he kept firing at it, and the hatch had opened up in its base. The launcher itself had just fired off all its missiles and did not explode when hit. What lay beneath the hatch proved far more volatile. It only took a few dozen shells flashing down it to start a fire. The initial explosion that followed blew the entire battery apart. Later ones occurred below the site and expanded the crater they repeatedly excavated.
"Rapier, gunfire, port side, evasive, evasive."
Alverez pulled her Cutlass into an even tighter starboard turn and dropped it nearer the ground. For a moment, tracers flashed perilously close to the helicopter, until its wingman raked the area where the fire came from with his own stream of cannon shells. Alverez righted her ship just as she caught sight of the two centaur-like creatures evaporating into secondary explosions.
"Watch it, Foil. These things just scored a hit,"
Alverez warned. A few thousand feet above them, an F-99 lost its battle to evade one of the anti-aircraft missiles fired by the battery. Its proximity fuse detonated it just under the aircraft, ripping it apart with a powerful blast and adding its fuel to the fireball. By the time the doomed fighter's wreckage finished hitting the ground, the rest of its squadron mates had reformed.
"Rapier, this is Echo Sierra Lead. Thanks for the payback. Over," said the flight leader. "Our pleasure, Echo Sierra," said Alverez. "When you guys hit the Citadel, be on the lookout for my squad. They'll be in the area. Over." "We'll try, and that base still has most of its defenses intact. Echo Sierra Lead, out." "Those things I shot up, were they Ezeghouls?"
"Over," asked the second gunship's pilot.
"I think they were," said Alverez. "Why? How should I record them? As enemy vehicles destroyed or personnel killed?"
"Over."
"We'll finish all that at the debrief. Resume original heading and fall in behind me. Let's find my squad before someone like those things does. Rapier out." "I thought those Ezeghouls had wings," Venetti said quietly. "How come they're not flying?"
"They're probably dangerous enough to a guy in a jet chute or even a helicopter," Hunter answered. "But I don't think even they could take on a feline." Hunter pointed his rifle muzzle at a Dark Legion unit gathering at the entrance to another bunker. While a few Razides and Necromutants could be seen in it, most of the unit was composed of Exeghouls. They towered over the rest, even Razides, and easily handled the Gatling guns and other heavy weapons in their powerful hands. From the squad's position at the edge of a forest patch of stunted trees, they could hear the creatures snarl and hiss at each other in a language all their own.
"Captain, I think they've spotted us," Halston said in a hushed, nervous tone. "They're turning our way."
"Everyone keep down. Weapons ready," said Hunter, lifting his head just high enough to check on the other members of his squad and make sure they were still lying hidden in the tree line. "No, I don't think it's us they noticed. I think it's something behind us."
"You could be right, Mitch," Rogers advised. "From the radio traffic, I'd say there's a few squadrons of jets inbound." "Captain, they're raising their weapons," said Halston. "What'll we do?"
"Stand by to fire. Target the Ezaghouls only.
Mitch, even if we all had machine guns like Ted's, they'd still outgun us,
said Rogers.
Are you sure this is a smart thing to do?
Smart thing for us to do is call in Julia and evac Nova Miami, Hunter responded, raising his voice high enough for the sarcasm to be heard. These creatures are probably targeting more fighters. If we can distract them, maybe our guys can have clean runs. Diane, Jake, you pull the triggers first.
Got it, Captain,
said Shacker, pushing the barrel of his rifle through the brush she was using for cover.
At this distance, headshots will be easy.
The bunker was some 300 yards from the tree line. Creatures gathered at its entrance were either outlined in pale light spilling from it, or the Citadel's massive foundation in the immediate distance. Parker and Shacker waited until most of the Ezaghouls were aiming their weapons before opening fire. They fired in unison, with Shacker's target taking a hit just above the left eye, blowing most of its head off. As its trembling body crashed to the ground, Diane's victim took a glancing blow to the same side of its head. The Ezaghoul bellowed in pain and was sent spinning to the ground. The Gatling gun it held fired wildly into the air, the tree line, and finally the rest of its unit. A Razide and another Ezaghoul fell wounded, while the rest opened fire on one of their own kind to stop the carnage. They scarcely noticed the volume of fire they were receiving from the forest, while Halston's machine gun chattered its way through the rest of the belt of ammunition it held. The squad's other weapons spat out smaller caliber shells and grenades. An Ezaghoul was hit in the left side by an anti-armor grenade. The resulting explosion tore it in half, finally getting the attention of the survivors. They had just turned their weapons on the forest when an ear-splitting screech ripped the air. All that was seen of the FA-99 was a blurred silhouette against the aurora veils and the glow of its afterburners. The area around the bunkers was pelted with a rain of plastic spheres. An instant later, they detonated in a wave of lightning-like flashes.
Keep your heads down,
Hunter shouted before he virtually buried his in the earth. He also tucked his arms in against his chest to present the smallest possible target to the coming storm of shrapnel. Even though the fighter's objective was nearly 1,000 feet away, the anti-personnel cluster bombs it dropped were highly indiscriminate area weapons. They filled the air with triangular carbide steel darts. The Ezaghouls and other creatures around the bunker were shredded by them. At the tree line, the darts had lost much of their velocity. Still, they chopped apart the more exposed trees and clicked loudly off the squad's body armor.
Captain, I think that did it,
said Parker, scanning the target area with her sniper scope. The moment the storm ended, and a brief, unnatural quiet settled over the terrain.
I hope so,
Hunter replied, rising slowly and checking the newest scratches to his lightweight armor.
If we get any more attention like this from the Air Force, it'll kill us. Anybody got hit?
I think I got a nick on my elbow,
said Harris, examining a smear of blood on his glove.
I hope the Dark Legion doesn't get any more dangerous than this.
They probably will. Wendy, take care of him.
Mitch, this is about the last cover we have between here and the Citadel,
Rogers observed.
It's still more than 2 clicks away. How are we going to cross the distance with this kind of activity?
No one said it'd be easy, said Hunter, but I think these guys might help us. Once again, the air was split by a screech of turbofan engines at full power. More flights of FA-99s swept in against the Citadel, unleashing a wave of laser and infrared-guided missiles on it. Most were targeted against its gun mounts and missile launchers, but a few struck some of the unfinished sections, commencing the Citadel's destruction.
All right, let's get moving,
Hunter continued, finishing the reloading of his rifle's grenade launcher.
The assault's beginning. We don't have much time between now and the arrival of the Hercules transports. This will be the only one chance we'll have to get inside that thing without a major firefight. Move it.
This time, Hunter took the point and led his squad out into the barren terrain. More flights of strike fighters screamed overhead and challenged the Citadel's defenses with a variety of guided and unguided weapons. Unlike the first waves, which completed their runs relatively unhindered, these were met with artillery fire and a few missile launches, almost as if the Citadel itself was finally awakening to the fact it had come under direct attack. With Legion attention turning to the airstrikes, Hunter's squad found crossing the empty terrain intimidating but relatively easy. They watched the aircraft making the bombing runs almost as much as the Citadel itself. The first time they were forced to take whatever cover they could was when a sharp bang echoed high above them. They glanced up to discover an FA-99 plunging out of a brief fireball. It righted just long enough for its cockpit pod to eject. Immediately after, it increased speed, and obeying its final program commands, the fatally damaged aircraft plunged deep into the Citadel. When it exploded, it shook the entire fortress and the land around it.
"Did you feel? Of course you did," said Ragathol. He turned to Ekmirias and noticed the look of concern in his eyes. "Find out what caused the tremor. Contact the Nexus directly. I don't wish to wait for a messenger to bring me the answer." Even several hundred feet underground, the fighter's impact was felt as a quake-like vibration. The nether room was shaken softly and briefly by it. Ragathol was stirred by the incident and rose from his throne. By the time he reached the console Ekmirias was manning, the answer was coming in.
"The tremor you feel was caused by a human warplane,"
said the necromutant, appearing on the console's lone view screen.
"We damaged it, and it chose to plunge into our structure."
"What's the damage to the Citadel?"
asked Ragathol, standing beside Ekmirias.
"The resulting blast penetrated the Nexus level, Lord Ragathol. We're unaffected, and we can work around the damage. We'll have to reroute power to overcome it. Unfortunately, this means Master Azarath is reducing the power levels to the hangar and flight facilities. Your departure will have to be cancelled for the present time."
"Cancelled? My triumph is to be cancelled?"
Ragathol brought down his fist hard on the console, breaking its metal cover plate and damaging the electrical systems inside it. A loud sputtering and puff of smoke erupted from it as the lone screen went blank. Even the wall screen dissolved into static now.
"Master, what are we to do now?"
asked Ekmirias, watching the life flicker out of system after system on his console.
"We're now unable to contact anyone."
"Accompany me to the hangar," Ragathol stormed. "I'll personally take command of it. If necessary, we will take the power we need to complete preparations and launch the spacecraft ourselves."
"Good God, head for the bunker," Hunter shouted. "I don't care how far we are, that thing's gonna come down with a bang."
In the moments following the crash, one of the Citadel's partially completed spires teetered to one side. For every degree it moved, it seemed to pick up momentum. Above the scream of jet engines could be heard the groaning of metal and the crunch of stonework. In the final seconds of its collapse, wind whistled around the spire. Then it impacted with an earth-jarring crash. The cloud of dust it raised obscured part of the Citadel, and the debris rained down as far away as the bunker the squad was hiding in.
"Captain, maybe we should use this moment to sneak inside,"
said Halston, motioning to the tunnel entrance deeper inside the bunker.
"At least we won't get hit by our own jets." "We'll be doing enough tunnel fighting once we're in that place," said Shacker, pointing to the fortress. "I'm not about to take a tunnel to get into the tunnels."
"No tunnel fights yet, Ted," Hunter advised. "It's likely we'll encounter Legion units somewhere in there, and we need to conserve our munitions for the time being. There'll be plenty of fighting for us once we're inside the Citadel. Leo, plan a charge at the entrance. Since we're not going to use it, let's make sure the Dark Legion can't either."
"Rapier, this is Foyle. We got a couple of survivors from this one. Request permission to effect rescue. Over."
"Granted," said Alverez, glancing to the left and catching sight of the ejected cockpit pod deploying its main parachutes.
"Get to it, you guys.
From the sound of the earlier downing, those crews don't stand much of a chance if the legions get to them first. Over.
Understood, Rapier, and we'll be on the lookout for your squad as well. Foil out. The trailing Cutlass broke sharply away from the lead ship and headed directly for the descending pod. In seconds, the semi-darkness swallowed it up, while the pod and its brightly colored parachutes were still readily visible. Because of its dark finish, the polar night even more effectively cloaked Alverez's gunship. Many of the Legion patrols it flew by never noticed it until tracer fire raked through them.
"Ground activity is getting kinda light out there, Lieutenant," said Taylor, switching between views from both the nose and aft turrets. "Think our guys were through here?" "Could be," said Alverez. "Lynn, you getting any response from the transmissions?" "No, Julia," Sutter answered, clicking off the transmit switch on the main cabin's terminal. "You think they're on another frequency? If they were, it'd be the distress channels, and so far we haven't heard anyone familiar on them."
"Lieutenant, ground blast, port side," said Taylor. "That looks like an underground demolition blast, not an artillery shell or missile."
"I think you might be right," said Alverez. "Look sharp. We're investigating this one."
Minutes after the second gunship turned to the left, the lead one followed suit. Only it kept lower to the ground and reduced its speed as it approached the area it wanted to search.
"It'll take anyone at least a day to dig that out,"
Venetti commented, looking back and admiring his handiwork.
"When I blow 'em, they stay blowed."
"At least the Legion won't be able to use the tunnel to sneak up on us," said Hunter, "or attack the ground forces when they arrive, which won't be too long from now. Come on, let's get moving before this place is swarming with troopers and legionnaires."
"I think this place is swarming with something else,"
Parker warned.
"I hear a plane, Captain, and it ain't no jet."
Mixed in with the cacophony of battle noises happening around them was the barest popping of rotor blades and the growl of suppressed turbines. The squad halted in advance and took what cover it could while it searched for the source of the noises. However, when the Cutlass was finally spotted, it was not because of anyone's sharp eyes, but its announcement.
"Battle axe, this is Rapier. Battle axe, this is Rapier,"
said a familiar voice, growing louder by the second.
"Stand by for touchdown."
In the last 50 feet of its descent, the gunship activated its landing lights and sideslipped to the right before finding a level enough patch of ground. Its landing skids already extended, it raised clouds of dust on its arrival and immediately shut down all external lights.
"Julia, what are you doing?"
Hunter demanded, after inserting a plug from his communication set into a jack normally used by ground crew.
"We don't need ground support, and we don't need you sitting on the ground. One of the other gunships may have spotted an easier way to get you inside the Citadel,"
said Alverez.
"Get inside. I'll explain on the way."
"All right. Everyone, in the copter, and move." Hunter quickly disconnected the headset and began waving for the rest of the squad to enter the Cutlass. "This cab's got a fast meter." The main cabin door slid forward as the squad ran from its scattered covering positions to it. In seconds, they had all piled in, and Alverez was gunning the engines to take off power.
"Lieutenant, some big door just opened in the Citadel," said Taylor, "and those Legion things are pouring out of it. Activate your laser tracker and switch a Hellion to laser guidance,"
Alverez ordered.
"Put the missiles as far up that hole as you can."
Will do. Arming Hellion." Seconds before the helicopter lifted off, another of its wingtip-mounted launch tubes ejected a missile. It flew toward the Citadel, maintaining a stabilized, ground-skimming altitude, while the gunship rose high into the air. In the last stage of its flight, the Hellion switched to laser guidance and homed in on the coherent light being reflected from the portal-like entrance in the Citadel's base. Already, there was a constant stream of legionnaires, centurions, and Razites pouring out of it. Few paid any attention to the stubby, short-finned projectile, even when it flew inside the tunnel. The strike fighters and lone gunship became their immediate targets, even though most of their weapons did not have the range to reach them. Only a few had even started to fire when the Hellion exploded deep inside the tunnel. Many of the creatures charging in for the entrance were blown out by it, and the structure in the immediate blast area caved in, effectively blocking the tunnel for any additional forces to use.
Interesting effect,
Watanabe noted, watching the entire sequence on one of the console's auxiliary screens.
A single missile has stopped a massed assault that would have required an entire artillery battery to destroy.
In a sense, it's very similar to what we did with the Kirishima,
said Ozawa, as he scanned the rest of the screens displaying warhead visual feeds.
You're learning fast, Rei-san. But why did the Legion choose to meet a single helicopter landing such a large ground force?
They probably thought it was part of the infantry assault we all know is coming,
said Watanabe, turning her attention to the tactical screen, where the large formations of Hercules transports and AH-19 gunships were just entering the inner defense zone.
And now, both Capital forces and ourselves know what those troops could face. I see Capital is redistributing its air assets accordingly. We should do the same.
What do you mean, Corporal?
Ozawa asked.
Bring all the drones into the Citadel inner defense zone. We'll establish patrol patterns for them, and we had better be prepared to use them.
Julia, this is Mitch. What's this easy way you've discovered into the Citadel? Hunter asked after connecting his headset to the gunship's intercom.
If there is one.
There is, I promise,
Alverez replied.
We're working with Hogan's Cutlass. They just discovered that the protective dome over the launch pad was hit during the strafing run and has partially collapsed. If we could finish the job, maybe it'll be a direct way into the Citadel's interior. We'd be a little more likely to find Lorraine Coven if we entered that way,
said Wendy.
If you'll recall, we were briefed that the Legion may be trying to take her off the planet.
It may make our task a little easier,
Hunter admitted.
And the Legion certainly wouldn't expect it. Julia, this'll be like flying into a grain silo. Think you can do it?
Sounds just like some of the VR games I used to play,
said Alverez.
I never crashed in any of them.
All right, we'll do it. But remember, this is reality, not virtual reality. Leo, Diane, open the compartment behind you. If you're going to descend into hell, then we better do it fully armored. Pack as much munitions as you can carry. We'll need it.
Wheeling into a hard left turn, the Cutlass stayed low to the ground and skimmed close to the Citadel's outer walls. Unlike the jets, it drew no defensive fire, which had grown increasingly sporadic and disorganized after repeated strikes. It briefly circled the location where the second gunship was rescuing the fighter crew. Then the two rejoined and flew toward the Legion's launch facilities. Behind them, the lead flights of Hercules 4 transports were just coming into view.
God, the architect of this thing has to be a mental patient,
said the lieutenant at the observation blister.
Sergeant, did you ever see the like?
Maybe in a spook movie, said Watts.
I gotta admit, I'm impressed.
You think we can take it, Sergeant?
Asked the private standing next to Watts.
Well, this time the Air Force and the Special Forces seem to be doing their job. They don't need the infantry to rescue them this time. Just finish the job.
Without warning, the cargo deck's low lighting changed to a soft red to develop everyone's night vision. A nervous murmur of voices swept through the soldiers. Everyone knew they were only minutes from landing.
Listen up, troopers,
said the platoon's captain, walking down from the cockpit's access steps.
Take your disembark positions. Sergeant, I suppose you like to be in front.
Guys in front always have the best fields of fire, Watts answered, grabbing his machine gun and moving closer to the tail ramp.
Of course I do, sir. Come on, kid. Stick close to me. Sure thing, Big Bob, said the private, following closely in the sergeant's wake. That fortress looks pretty huge. You think we'll make it?
If you'll learn not to get reckless and remember who your best friend is, that rifle is, not me, the lieutenant or your buddies. Don't let it down, and it'll never let you down. A hard rumble shook the troop carrier as the soldiers finished moving to their disembark positions. The fore and aft pairs of vertical lift engines were being restarted, yet another sign that the huge aircraft would soon be landing. Also perceptible was the sensation of deceleration. The pod-mounted main engines were not only being throttled back, their exhaust nozzles were being deflected as well. With the transports reducing speed, the AH-19 gunships were at last able to jump ahead of them and sweep the designated landing zones for any remaining Legion forces.
We move any more ammo into this cabin, we'll throw the ship out of balance, said Vanetti, noticing how little was left in the aft storage compartment.
That'll be enough, Hunter advised, punching up the external camera views on the overhead terminal.
Finish loading yourselves. We're almost in the target area. Julia, this is Mitch. Circle the launch facilities when we reach them.
What had once been almost the sole above-ground features of the Legion base were now dwarfed by the Citadel and stood in its shadow. They had received some attention from the FA-99s. A service tower was down, and the segmented dome over the launch pad was damaged. Several of the wedge-shaped sections had collapsed, but most of the dome remained intact. As instructed, Alverez and her wingmen began orbiting the complex on their arrival.
I can't see anything inside it,
said Parker, trying to look through the dome's collapsed sections.
I wonder what's below it.
We're going to find out soon, said Hunter.
Julia, this is Mitch. Blow the rest of it in.
In response to the command, the turret on both helicopters cut loose on the dome. Sustained bursts, the 20mm Gatling guns chopped apart what was left, which fell inside a circular shaft.
My God, it must be at least 100 meters in diameter,
Shacker estimated after the last segment had fallen in. And who knows how deep it is, Hunter added.
Julia, this is Mitch. You think you can fit the ship in there? If there's no obstruction, there shouldn't be a problem, said Alverez.
Then take us in, and tell your wingman he's to stay in this area for as long as he can. I don't want anyone or anything coming in on top of us.
Will do, Mitch. Stand by for descent. Julia out.
Hand me a few more rifle grenades, said Hunter once he swung the terminal around for Sutter to use. Of the munitions he received, he loaded the first ones into his rifle until its launcher was full. Then he added the rest to the Harker combat harness he wore under his armor. I know you all feel overloaded, but I think you're going to need every grenade and bullet we're carrying when we reach the bottom of that pit. This isn't a game, a computer simulation, or an exercise we're entering, and it probably won't be like any battle we've ever fought either. The hell we're descending into will be mankind's fate if this operation doesn't succeed. Mutant Chronicles, Fiction, The Apostle of Insanity Trilogy, Volume 2, Frenzy, by John Allen Price. Chapter 18. End.